Alright guys, it has been way too long since I've made a video, so I'm just gonna really break this one down. I have no excuses for why I haven't made a video in so long. Really, the season just got really depressing and it didn't seem like there was a lot to talk about towards the end, except for just negative stuff, which is really not what I like to focus on. I like to think optimistically about the future. So I've been really thinking more about like what are the needs for this team and what can really improve this team moving forward, because obviously there is a lot of room for improvement. And the biggest thing I've seen between a lot of fans is either the wide receiver position, basically, or the linebacker position. And then some people feel like it's maybe safety as well. So those three would be like the biggest three. Obviously, I think anybody you ask is going to have a top three that looks something like that. So I'm going to challenge you guys down below. Leave a comment with your top three, ranking it first, second, and third biggest needs. And I'm going to be curious to see what a lot of you have to say, especially if you have something outside of those three that I just mentioned. Um, Really, for me, I'm just going to break it down. Wide receiver, I don't think is the biggest need, and I know that's surprising to a lot of you. And I really don't want them to draft a wide receiver in the first round because, well, I don't really trust them to do it. Unfortunately, I think the history has proven that that is not a good idea. Maybe it would, maybe this would be the one time it's different, but that idea just kind of makes me nervous. And I think any long term Patriots fans would definitely agree that that is kind of a nerve wracking thought to think of them trying to draft another wide receiver, especially how the last one went. But anyway, I really think there is some potential with the current wide receiver group, and I would prefer them to kind of try to trade for a new wide receiver or pick one up in the free agency, somebody a little bit more proven, instead of trying to pick somebody up a draft, in the draft, a rookie. That idea is a little bit more nerve wracking. But right now we have a good dynamic. Nelson Aguilar with his speed kind of opens things up. He's not that big of a threat by himself, but the ability to really force them to play a little bit deeper, I think, opened up things for Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne. Really, my favorite wide receiver on the team is Kendrick Bourne. I think he's really embraced the Patriots team, and I think really talent-wise, he's kind of the best, most balanced wide receiver in my opinion. Also, let me know if you disagree with that. And also Christian Wilkerson. Now we have to pay attention to him because he had that one monster game. We have to really keep in mind that he could be a player that could pop off and do that here and there, or he could be a player that's going to develop. He could be that next Jacoby Myers, or it could just be like a one-time thing and he could never, do anything again. So really, there's a lot of possibilities. It is interesting to think about. I could see how adding a true number one wide receiver should be a priority. I don't think it's a good idea to do that through the draft, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they attempt to do that. So even though I think that's what they shouldn't do, that doesn't mean I don't think they will. I really do feel like there's a really good chance they are going to draft a wide receiver with the number one pick. Now, my biggest need, I'm just going to throw it out there. I think the biggest need at this point is the linebacker position. And that depends on a lot of things, okay? That depends on really how do they feel about the young guys that didn't really get to play. Because there is a lot of them on the roster that didn't get to play or didn't play really enough for us to know for sure if they are that guy. First off, Josh Uche, who's technically a linebacker slash edge rusher. He was amazing. I mean, in the beginning of the season, if you remember, and then it seemed like they just stopped playing him. I mean, he was getting pressure and sacks left and right. And then it's like the second half of the season, I didn't even see the guy. So, I mean, obviously that leads you to feel like he is going to be possibly something of a force to be reckoned with moving forward at the linebacker position. But at the same time, the fact that he didn't get to play in that second half kind of leaves more question marks than anything, I would say. So we have that going on. There's some other young guys like Raekwon McMillan. Obviously, I think he tore his ACL or maybe his Achilles or maybe even MCL. I don't know exactly what it was off the top of my head. But during the offseason, and that's why we didn't really get to see him. And he is a younger guy. He is 25 right now. He will be 26 at some point during the season next season. So he is on the younger side of things, especially when you compare that to our other linebackers that we have. Now, there's a couple of other interesting ones like Inferne Jennings that we didn't see at all this season. Obviously, he's kind of a sophomore, if you will, and we haven't gotten to see a lot of him at all. He's 24 and a half right now, and he will be 25 during the season. So that's another player where we're going to have to wait and see what's going on with him. We have a lot of young options, guys. And then also on top of that, there's also Cameron McGrone, who was a rookie this season a little bit later in the draft. We didn't get to see him at all. And then also there's Ronnie Perkins, also a rookie this year that we didn't get to see at all outside of the preseason. So there's like four young linebackers where if they feel confident in like two or three of those guys moving forward, eventually being the starters, I think I'm probably wrong with what I'm saying here. But what are the odds of that? Truly, what are the odds of that? I think more realistically, there's probably one or two of those four or five guys that I mentioned that could be solid starters one day. Likely more than half of them won't really amount to anything. That's just how it goes. A lot of those guys I mentioned are third round picks or later, so that's also worth noting. They're not like first round or second round picks, each of them. I think Josh Uche is the only one. He might be a second round pick. I think I'm correct on that. A second or third round pick. But I think he was the highest picked out of all of those guys. And then Ronnie Perkins, I believe, was a third or fourth round pick. Yeah, third round pick. And then I'm looking at it right here. Josh Uche was a second round pick. So I think those two guys are the most likely to pan out. And Fernay Jennings was a third round pick. I think he also has a good likelihood of panning out, possibly. Him or Ronnie Perkins would probably be that second most likely guy to pan out. Raekwon McMillan has had a history of being a pretty good linebacker, but he's, again, up there in age. Our current starters, I think the biggest issue, and this is another thing I really want to address, is speed. Did you notice how slow our linebackers was? It was painful. You've got guys like Dante Hightower, and I love him, guys. I love him. Everybody loves him, obviously. But I think in today's day and age, it's just created an issue, his speed, for real. He's 32. There's a good chance he's going to retire. We're going to need either a rookie, a free agent, or one of the guys we already have to step up, basically. We have Dante Hightower, Jawan Bentley, who's also younger. Jawan Bentley is 25 and a half. But the thing is, he's also slow. He's younger and slow, so he was never fast. He's one of those run-stuffing linebackers, and he just doesn't give you that great coverage ability, and that leads to a lot of problems in the passing game. In today's day and age, you want your linebackers to be a lot more like safeties than your more traditional linebackers, or at least some of them. The problem is all of our linebackers are kind of that more run-stuffing, hard tackling linebacker that's just almost like closer to a defensive end size guy rather than a safety. Um, let's see some other guys. Matthew Judon, I mean, obviously he's 29 and a half. He's getting up there in age, but I think we can get a couple more good years out of him, mostly as an edge rusher. He did show some potential in the passing game to be a little bit of a coverage guy as well, and I think he's probably faster than Jawan Bentley and Dante Hightower. That is debatable, and I'm not exactly sure if that's completely true or not, but that's just based on my own eye test. That's what I've kind of noticed. He's around the same weight, so I mean, it's a toss-up either way, probably. But regardless, his pass rushing ability gives him much more value than the other linebackers. And then you have Jamie Collins, who's 32 and a half. I mean, obviously he had some really good games, but then he also had just some really painfully, quiet games where you didn't hear about him at all. I think he struggled with some injuries as well. And then you have Kyle Van Noy, who right here on the coverage stats played well, but technically it's just the speed that's the problem. I think their awareness and their coverage skills are okay. It's the speed that's the problem, and all these guys are in their 30s except for Jawan Bentley, and then Matthew Judon narrowly isn't in his 30s. But I think they're all kind of up there in age. They're all a bit slower. And then, the younger guys, it's like who's going to pan out or not. It's a very questionable position group, I think, for the team moving forward. And I think they really need a true, just one or two true speed linebackers that they can rely on. I think off the top of my head, one of the guys out of the young guys that I mentioned, in Fernay Jennings, I think has some nice speed. If I remember correctly with him, I think he did. He was known kind of for his sideline to sideline speed a little bit in college, so that gives you kind of some a little bit more hope there that he could be that guy. Cameron McGrone is a little bit lighter as well. He's 236, 6'1", and he's 21 years old, very very young. So I would say he's probably a faster guy as well. I don't have his 40 time off the top of my head. And then Ronnie Perkins is more like 250, 6'3", so you would expect him to be a little bit slower. I think they need to draft a linebacker or two within the first 4 rounds at least, and really bring more talent to compete with those younger guys that we have. Unless, again, there's things that I don't know that the team does, and a majority of these guys actually are going to be starters one day, and they've just been hiding it from us. The only one right now that I feel confident has a really solid starting role would be Josh Uche. He showed so much potential these last 2 seasons, and I feel like he's leagues above all of those other young guys that we have on the team. But obviously, there's multiple linebacker positions, and we're going to need multiple young, talented wide receiver, or not wide receivers. We need that too, but linebackers to fill these roles. These guys are all 30, 31, 32. In just a couple of seasons, we're not going to have any of these guys. Um, we'll maybe have Matthew Judon left, and obviously Jawan Bentley. Matthew Judon not for that long, and then all of a sudden we're going to need 3 or 4 or 5 linebackers to step up. We only have 5 young guys on the team right now. And again, the question mark is one of those guys going to be a solid starter? 2, 3, 4, how many? And that's going to determine how big of a need we actually have at a linebacker moving forward. Other than that, I mean, the safety position's also pretty slow. I would say Adrian Phillips played really good, but how fast of a player is he? I don't think he's like an elite fast guy like Devin McCourty was in his prime. McCourty's slowing down, and I would say in all likelihood, McCourty and Dante Hightower are going to retire after this season. So that's leaving 2 really big gaps as well. I think safety is also a huge need. I would even make the argument that my number 1 biggest need is linebacker, number 2 is safety, and then number 3 is wide receiver. I genuinely feel like that might be the case. Because wide receiver, I feel like there is some promise there. I feel like there is some sort of talent where that group can actually improve, and maybe even just with one addition especially could completely turn that thing around. But at safety, we have Kyle Duggar, who's going to be primarily a strong safety. He is slower, he is bigger, he's more of a linebacker type, and he's already 26. He was an old rookie, so he's already 26. It's not like he's 21 like these other guys. Um, and again, he is a little bit slower and more of a linebacker type safety. So the thing is, he's not going to be that speed over the top free safety guy. And Adrian Phillips is going to be 30 by the time the season starts. So that just leads you to kind of feel like what is the future here at the safety position? Once Devin McCourty retires, Adrian Phillips is getting up there in age. Kyle Duggar will fill in that kind of box safety. I don't even know what you want to call it, strong safety, but they might even try to use him as the number 3 safety. I don't even know if they want him to be like the full starting strong safety. It's kind of been mostly Devin McCourty and Adrian Phillips starting to this point, so I don't know what's going to happen once Devin McCourty retires. If they'll slide Adrian Phillips to the free safety position and move Kyle Duggar up, or if they're going to look to purely replace Devin McCourty with somebody else and keep the rules kind of where they're at, minus Devin McCourty. My goodness, there's so many question marks. And at this point, I know this is depressing to think about, but I don't know if the team is going to improve from this season to next with all of the people we're going to lose and all the things that have to be improved upon, or if we're actually going to stay about where we're at next season, or maybe even get a little bit worse just for the time being as we're continuing to rebuild. Obviously, we're a really good team for a team that's rebuilding, but I don't know if we've moved up beyond kind of the 8 to 11 win range, honestly, with this team. I don't know if we can take enough steps this offseason to move us into the next category. I don't know. I want to know you guys' opinion about that too. The good news is that I have a lot of videos to make. You can tell I have a lot of thoughts as I've gone on for about 13 and a half minutes so far. I have a ton of thoughts, guys, and I want to make more videos here on this channel and talk about the Patriots. There's obviously a lot of time between now and the offseason and the draft and everything, so the videos are going to be pretty spread apart here as there's not a lot of new interesting subjects coming up, but I do have a lot of thoughts before the draft and free agency even starts, so there will be multiple videos between now and then. Expect me to be a lot more active once the draft, the free agency, and eventually then, training camp and preseason starts. That's when we're going to start uploading a lot more. That's my favorite time of the football season, actually, is like draft and stuff. I love rookies. I love draft. I love new additions and talking about that. That's my favorite stuff. So I'm excited for the future this year with this channel, guys. I hope you guys are too. Sorry it's been so long since I uploaded, like I said, but be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.